Hello, I'm Jill Zeller, and I'm going to read a segment from my historical novel, The Last Dog in England. And this segment opens as Doug Marsh, an army captain and veterinarian, visits Rose Ranch, where two rescued English Mastiff puppies are reportedly ill. And while there, Doug encounters someone he met a long time ago and didn't expect to see again. Normally, Captain Doug Marsh didn't go on the local calls because he was still in the Army and working for the military, but Mother insisted. She knew the rancher, apparently, because she knew, as she always did, about all the dogs in Alameda County and their breeders, and who had which dogs and the particular breeds they favored. There had been an outbreak of a respiratory illness running through kennels and killing puppies. Mother was worried it had infected the rancher's new young mastiffs. So he took the ancient Ford with barely enough gas in it and one of Mother's hoarded coupons for the emergency fill-up and rode east through Crow Canyon, following a winding road through brown hills dotted with California oaks, along a creek bed just going dry as the hot California summer began. He loved this part of the Bay Area, far from Berkeley with its intrusive fingers of fog, and into hot farmland where walnut, peach, and cherry orchards thrived and struggled, thirsty for the water being pumped from the canals to the Army and naval bases for their priority uses. It took nearly 40 minutes to reach Rose Ranch. It was a large one, Mother had told him, spreading over 2,000 acres and rolling hills of open ranch land just east of Livermore. The war had treated Livermore well. Doug remembered it as a dusty cow town, a place of belligerent cowboys. Its two redeeming factors in Doug's view was the yearly rodeo and multiple vineyards, especially the vineyards. The road took him through town. Banners announcing the June rodeo were strung across First Street. There was a straight shot on East Avenue past Livermore Naval Air Station, where row upon row of shiny Navy trainers lined the runway, and the metal roofs of the Quonset huts glinted in the newly risen sun. But Doug could see, as he turned into Rose Ranch's entrance, that this place had seen better times. One of the R's had lost its right leg, and the sign arcing over the entrance badly needed a new coat of paint. But the drive was lovely, passing through oak and eucalyptus, hugging a creek. Quail darted across the road. Turkey vultures patrolled the clear blue sky. A long bridge spanned the creek, still shuffling water along this early summer. Everything smelled of sage and acorns and drying grass, and Doug left the window open despite the dust. The house was a mission style, single story. Sycamores and walnut trees shaded it and the drive. A large weather-stained barn stood across from the house on his right. Two bay horses and a milch Jersey cow watched him from a paddock next to the farm. Chickens and geese fluttered across the dusty expanse between the house and the barn. An ancient Chevrolet coupe and a newer pickup were parked outside a good-sized garage, also of stucco and red roof tile. As he pulled up next to the pickup, a movement in the rearview mirror caught his eye. Two people were crossing the yard behind him. Turning, he watched a woman in dungarees and a plaid shirt pull a young man in rumpled trousers and an undershirt toward the open barn door. Barking excitedly, a big black lab-like mutt followed them. Doug sat for a moment, feeling both embarrassed and amused, watching them disappear inside the barn. This reminded him of something, a memory from England, of him and Pen running into the sheep shed at the farm where she was working during the war to snatch a moment together. Her body pressed against his, and he could taste her lips again. His face became warm, and he turned back to his task at hand, putting his hand on that leather bag and opening the car door. As he got out, he saw the woman and the man emerge from the barn carrying a huge wooden crate. It appeared to be very heavy, and they struggled with it. The young man, who looked strong, nearly dropped his corner. Putting down his satchel, Doug came to the rescue, catching the crate before it crashed to the ground. The three of them carried it through a picket gate to the rear of the house and onto the back porch, and at first it seemed as if it wouldn't fit through the screen door. "God damn it, I told you it wouldn't fit," the young man grumbled. He had black hair and scowling black eyebrows. "No, wait!" The woman bent down, brushed a long lock of hair the same color as the boy's from her face. "If we turn it on end, I'm sure it'll go through." Doug saw that she had a point. Without a word, he helped her place the crate upright. She glanced at him and smiled, and with some pushing and much cursing from the woman's brother, because that was who he had to be, they got the crate inside. "Danny, help me carry it to the kitchen." The woman's voice was sharp, and still scowling, Danny obliged, picking up the crate by himself and banging against walls and keeping up a running monologue of complaints about his sister and life in general, and muscled it into the kitchen. Doug stood near the door while this went on. The spacious kitchen smelled of fresh coffee and bacon for breakfast. Plates, still loaded with untouched scrambled eggs, sat around an oak table. At the table was an older woman, silver hair and sharp dark eyes taking him in under startling dark eyebrows. One of the mastiff puppies Mother had told Doug about snuggled in her lap. Doug nodded at her, gave her a smile she didn't return. I'm Doug Marsh, the veterinarian. Dr. Walt was busy." He felt his voice drifting away as the woman gazed at him in an unreadable way. "Is this Mrs. Rose? Why doesn't she speak?" His face growing warm, he glanced at his shoes. Under his feet was broad dark planking, and the plaster walls were painted a soft pearl color. To his left was an arch leading into a wide hallway. The girl must be the rancher's daughter. Having vanished while her brother battled with the crate, she now appeared through the arch carrying a load of blankets and towels. "Are you the vet? We were just getting the puppies settled." She looked at him eagerly, as if he was the best thing she'd seen all day. Her eyes were deep green and her skin pale, but flushed with sun. She seemed a normal height and weight, and was, maybe, he guessed, around 20. But she seemed busy and strong and in charge. Doug nodded. She gazed at him, and he saw a smile lift one corner of her mouth. And he realized he was staring because she was beautiful. Well, no, very pretty. Not classically or Hollywood, but smart and bright and lovely and suddenly, uncomfortably, very familiar. To do something, anything to hide his interest, Doug stuck out his hand. "Doug Marsh. My mother, she knew about the dogs and called me." The woman laughed because her hands were full of wool and linens. "I'm glad you were able to get away, Captain. I'm Kitty Rose. That unpleasant young man assisting me is my little brother, Danny." So she recognized Doug's uniform, even without his cap, which he had taken off and tucked under his arm. "You said both pups are in the kitchen?" Doug looked around for his satchel, then realized he'd left it sitting on the ground in the yard. Kitty Rose nodded. "The crate's for them, to keep 'em warm, you see." Turning away abruptly, she dropped her bundle into the crate that Danny had positioned beside the stove. Doug forced himself not to watch her and went to fetch his satchel. He stood in the drive for a minute, looking east to hills burning quickly from green to brown in the May sun. She didn't recognize him. She wouldn't have known him as different from any of the mass of boys at that Hayward swim meet that year. She wouldn't remember them standing side by side when the awards were handed out. And here she was all these years later, and he still nursed the biggest crush of his life. Kitty Rose. I should have known. Thank you, and I hope you'll be intrigued enough to read this book. Part 2 of this tale of post-World War II love and intrigue will be available next year in 2024.